And then I started analyzing tools for enterprise architecture. And that's when I started understanding that this is an extremely interesting field.
You have had the unique experience of working at industry giants like Microsoft, Invesco, and Novartis.
There is endpoint protection, threat assessment, and even agentic AI that can proactively take action.
Hello and welcome to FaceTime with Leaders, a podcast series by Directors Institute, World Council of Directors. I'm Sunny Pancholi, and today we have the privilege of speaking with a visionary leader who has spent over 2 decades shaping the future of enterprise architecture, IT strategy, and digital transformation. With a career spanning industry giants like Novartis, Microsoft, and Invesco, Mr. Nilotpal Das has been at the forefront of modernizing IT infrastructures, leading multi-million-dollar cloud migration programs, and pioneering enterprise architecture frameworks that drive real business agility. His expertise has influenced financial services, healthcare, and technology organizations, making him a trusted authority in IT governance and strategic innovation. But beyond the world of cloud migration and enterprise architecture, his work isn't just about technology. It's about transformation, resilience, and innovation. He has mastered the art of turning complex IT landscapes into strategic assets, ensuring businesses don't just keep up with change, but stay ahead of it. With a career built on vision, adaptability, and relentless problem solving, his journey is a testament to how the right technology, when aligned with the right strategy, can redefine industries. Mr. Das, it's an absolute pleasure to have you with us on FaceTime with Leaders. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm very glad to be here.
Great to hear that. So, Mr. Das, technology isn't just about systems, it's about transformation, and you have spent over 2 decades at the heart of it. Every leader has that moment when they realize they are not just working in an industry, but actively shaping its future. So, looking back, was there a particular experience or turning point that set you on this path towards enterprise architecture and IT strategy? Was it a natural evolution, or did unexpected challenges and opportunities shape your journey along the way?
It's actually a very interesting story. It's neither. So this is the time when I was working with Microsoft as a technology architect, and I did not understand enterprise architecture at that point in time. I thought that enterprise architecture is enterprise application architecture, which is architecture of enterprise applications, really large applications. And I saw this position open up in a financial services organization as enterprise architect. And most interestingly, the person who was interviewing me also had a similar definition of enterprise architecture. So I sort of cracked the interview. And then I had a brief discussion with my hiring manager. And then the hiring manager, after I got hired, started describing what needed to be done. He said, we need to understand the business, all the business processes. We need to understand how data flows within the organization, he says, and how applications support each business process and each business function. And this is the time I panicked a little bit. I said, okay, this is something I've never done before, And I had a very good friend of mine, Dhananjay, who had done TOGAF at that time. He'd heard about Open Group. And he said, there is some framework out there that people use for enterprise architecture. Why don't you take a look at it? And then I studied, and then I cleared the exam. This was TOGAF 8.1.1, really long time back. And then I started analyzing tools for enterprise architecture. And that's when I started understanding that this is an extremely interesting field, right? This is something that can reshape an IT organization, reshape an entire organization, not just IT. And then we did many things in enterprise architecture. We set up an architecture board, and then we hired and trained a team of enterprise architects and set up an architecture repository and a lot of fun things, really. And since then, I've been talking about enterprise architecture, writing about enterprise architecture. I even run a podcast called Enterprise Architecture Radio, which talks about the business challenges and technology solutions to those business challenges, and how enterprise architecture can create a bigger picture view of the organization and solve many problems.
Mr. Das, can I put it this way that careers in technology aren't always linear? Sometimes it's about being at the right place at the right time, and sometimes it's about turning challenges into opportunities.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's how you respond to these opportunities that makes or breaks you. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, Mr. Das, every organization has its own DNA when it comes to IT strategy. Some prioritize innovation at all costs, while others focus on stability and governance. So, you have had the unique experience of working at industry giants like Microsoft, Invesco, and Novartis, each with its own culture, challenges, and approach to transformation. So, from your perspective, how did those IT strategies differ? And what lessons did you take away from navigating these diverse environments?
Very, very interesting question. You're right. There are what I how define it is there are three kinds of organizations out there. There are software product and services companies, uh, actually software product companies, and then there are services and consulting organizations, and then there are core businesses. Core businesses like healthcare, financial services, banks, retails, etc. Right, and each one is unique in the way it is designed. Now, software product companies and software services companies are slightly different, and then core businesses are unique. The core businesses have a goal which is different from IT or software. They don't have really much to do with IT or software. At least that's how it is believed in the industry. Um, Depending upon the nature of the business, how regulated the industry is, etc., the environment changes, right? A software product company or a software services company is more relaxed, more, and most of the innovations come out of these organizations because they're not very strictly governed. Um, in core businesses, depending upon what kind of business you are in, the level of governance is different. An airlines industry, for example, is uh, e- extremely regulated, because how they build their planes and how they fly their planes will literally save or kill lives, etc. Same is the case with healthcare and pharmaceutical industries. We deal with extending lives, we deal with medicines that people take. So, and then financial services are also somewhat regulated because they deal with other people's money. Now, depending upon the regulation, you have to define how bureaucratic an organization is or how relaxed the organization is. So there are these differences, but there is one common theme that cuts across all organizations. Every organization has a goal and a vision, and everything that happens within that organization is driven towards that goal and vision, right? Um, there are a couple of lessons that I've taken in this whole thing. Three lessons primarily. One is the more aligned you are towards the goal of the organization, the more successful your projects and programs are going to be. And this is something that I see which is slightly lacking in the industry. People, especially at the lower levels of the organization, when you are a programmer, you don't really understand the business goal. You're just trying to understand how do I get the data and how do I show the data, etc. But when you align of why you are doing what you're doing, your programs and projects can be more successful. Second is agility in the face of change. How quickly can you change? And changes and transformations are more about the culture than they are about technologies. And there's a lot more that can be said about that. And the third is leveraging technology for competitive advantage. The world is changing at a pace that has never been seen before, and technologies are changing really, really quickly. How agile are you when it comes to understanding these technologies and leveraging them for competitive advantage? That defines how good an organization you are. So these are some of the lessons that I've taken.
Absolutely, Mr. Das. And it's incredible to know how the same core technology principles can take on completely different form depending on the organization's vision and priorities.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So moving ahead, Mr. Das, the shift to public cloud services like AWS and Azure has unlocked incredible opportunities like scalability, agility, and innovation at a pace we have never seen before. But with that freedom comes a critical challenge that is, of course, utmost security. So, finding the right balance between flexibility and robust protection isn't just about policies. It's about strategy, foresight, and the ability to adapt. So, with your deep experience in cloud transformation, how do you approach this delicate balance?
That's a very interesting question. You are absolutely right. It is a delicate balance because if you are trying to secure everything and if you restrict everybody, that doesn't help either. Your business will stop. You have to provide that one level of flexibility, but you can't compromise on security either. Now, this delicate dance of security and flexibility you need to have a multi-pronged strategy. The first thing that comes to mind is zero trust. Threats to an organization can come from any direction, right? It could be from within the organization, like disgruntled employees, for example, or from outside the organization, like hackers and such, ransomware. So you need to run with the assumption that threats can come from anywhere and provide access to people only to the extent that is absolutely required um, to do their work, to do their business, whatever role they are in. We need to understand what privileges they need and only provide that much. And this can come from a robust identity and access management strategy, right? You need to have in place identity and access management, which does two things. One is authenticate who you are, whether you are the person that you say you are, which can be done through authentication. And authentication has many strategies like multi-factor authentication these days. And then there is authorization, which is understanding the roles and privileges, which role requires how much minimum privileges to do their job and provide that. But that's not enough. There is data classification and encryption. Data classification meaning we need to identify all the data that the organization is using and what is its confidentiality level, what is the data privacy level, and depending upon that, provide appropriate encryption. Encryption at rest, encryption in motion, everywhere, confidential and highly sensitive information needs to be encrypted. But doing this, just that much is also not enough. Next comes monitoring. You need to constantly monitor your environment to make sure that everything is in place. Now, there are two ways that you can do monitoring. There are tools and technologies that help you do that. Tools like CloudStrike or there are a number of tools that are out there that even utilize artificial intelligence today. There is endpoint protection, threat assessment, and even agentic AI that can proactively take action, counteraction against any threat or any anomaly that has been detected, within the environment. And then there is the manual monitoring, where you should have a governance team that looks into whether all the standards and best practices are being followed or not by people within the organization. Compliance assessment or governance is not just about making people follow standards, right? It is also about assessing the standards constantly, making sure that the standards themselves are not outdated, updating themselves when it comes to standards also. And it's a little bit difficult because people within the organization will not always comply, and that's why I say that security is not one team's business. Security is everybody's business. Everybody needs to be aware the importance of security, and there has to be appropriate training given to everyone so that they understand the value of security and they comply to standards. And then there are other things like you could have a hybrid cloud strategy, for example. So not everything, if you're new to public cloud, for example, and I'm not in any way saying that public cloud is insecure. Uh, if you are a matured organization that has done public cloud for many years, you can make public cloud as secure as on-premise data centers. But if you're new to public cloud, don't immediately jump onto the bandwagon of public cloud and push everything to the public. Have a hybrid cloud strategy. Sensitive information can be in a more secured environment, which you are already mature at, like an on-premise data center. And then, other information can go to the public cloud, something like that. And then finally, last but not the least, a response plan. Let's say that you have already been attacked, and no matter how protected you are or not, how secure you are at some point in time going to have an incident, right? Where you get attacked by a hacker or a ransomware or something like that. Do you have a response plan? Do you have a team that is on standby to respond immediately to any kind of attacks or threats? Do you have a clean room environment from where you can bring up business critical applications, which is completely isolated from your existing environment? So there are a number of strategies that you can put in place to respond to an ongoing attack or an existing attack. So these are some of the things. Now, of course, this is not an exhaustive list. There are many other things that you can do, and this podcast does not give us sufficient time to talk about it at length. But these are some of the things that come to my mind off the top of the head.
But that's really a balanced approach, Mr. Das. So often we hear about cloud security as a trade off, but the way you frame it as a strategy rather than a limitation really shifts the perspective.
Absolutely.
Great, great, great. All right. So moving ahead, Mr. Das, IT modernization is often seen as a technology driven initiative, but in reality, the biggest challenges and the biggest successes come from the people and processes behind it, right? So, no matter how advanced the systems are, true transformation only happens when mindsets shifts, teams embrace change, and organizations break away from legacy ways of thinking. So, from your experience leading large scale modernization programs, what cultural shifts do you believe are essential for a successful transformation?
You're so right. And this is one of the biggest challenges when it comes to transformation. Earlier, when I was talking about compliance, I was telling you that everybody needs to understand that security is everybody's business and everybody needs to be trained in that. That's because people need to understand. And what is culture really? Culture is the behavior that people show within the organization in general, right? Uh, Technologies are very easy to implement. I know that technologies are changing at a very fast pace, but still I feel that technologies are easy to change or transform. It's the people that are really difficult to change. And there are I think, two barriers that people have when it comes to change, right? One is the fear of change, obviously, right? People don't like change in general. They don't want to change because they are accustomed to the way that they do things, right? And the other is organizational fatigue, as I call it, right? Organizational fatigue is people get tired, right? You go through a large transformation within the organization. They've been already, stretched to a limit to understand new technologies or to understand new ways of doing things, and they get tired. And then after one transformation completes, you start with another. So organizational fatigue. But both of these challenges can be resolved through an understanding, right? Through the culture of the organization. When you create a culture of the organization that where you make people believe that transformations are going to happen at a much faster rate going forward, and people who do not transform are going to get left behind. I'm not going to tell you the over beaten up story of Kodak where they did not, embrace the digital camera. And but the point is, everybody now understands that transformation is a change is required. It's a necessity thing. Leaders constantly talk to people saying that, be excited about transformations, create a culture where people understand that change is absolutely necessary. you know it removes the organizational fatigue because you're not changing because you're being forced to, but because you're changing because you want to, right? As far as um, fear of change is concerned, one is obviously when you understand that you need to change, the fear gets eliminated a little bit. Second is there is fear of change also because you don't know what's going to happen when you change. What's going to be the outcome? Are you going to have to? Is it going to be more difficult for you to do things, or is it going to be easier? Well, there is enterprise architecture that resolves that problem because it gives you a end state, a picture of how everything is going to look like after the transformation is complete. But you don't really need the term enterprise architecture for that. Leaders need to help people understand the vision that they have and how things are going to change and how they are going to make people's life better after the transformation. And these things can really affect how people look at change. This could change the culture of the organization as well.
Absolutely, Mr. Das. As we all know, transformation isn't about technology, it's about people behind the systems who make or break a transformation.
Yes, absolutely. If people don't change, technology change is not going to impact the business. Yeah.
Rightly said, Mr. Das. All right, so let's move on to our next segment of question, and here it is. As you continue to shape technology strategy as the highest levels, Mr. Das, what's next for you? Do you see yourself taking on more boardroom roles, influencing governance and IT decision making at a broader scale? And what kind of legacy do you hope to leave behind in the world of technology and enterprise leadership?
That's a lovely question. Times have changed. There was a time when business would go to IT and say, this is what I want, right? And then IT would go back and say, okay, we've understood what you want. Come back after 9 months. And then they go back and they work on whatever the requirements were given to them for 9 months, 10 months, 12 months. And after 12 months, they deliver a solution, right? And this solution may or may not meet the requirements that were specified. In most cases, it did not, right? Um, and the reason could be two. One reason is the requirements were not properly understood. And so they built something that was not really required. Or in the 9 to 12 months, the requirements actually changed, right? They did need what they said, but Not anymore. They need something else. But that time is long gone. Today, it doesn't take 9 to 12 months for things to change. Things are changing at a much faster rate. Um, and and business doesn't just come and say, this is what I want. Technologies literally lead change. Technologies such as, if you take the example of Blockbuster, for example, and Netflix in its contrast. Netflix literally changed the way we watch television today, right? Um, and there are a million examples where technology literally changed the way we do business, right? Amazon, for example, or so many things. So now the technology people need to play a more proactive role in deciding the strategy of the organization, right? There's this Venn diagram that comes to mind where there is one circle that has business innovation in it. There's a second circle which has technology excellence in it. And there is this third circle that has organizational agility in it. And the space where all these circles overlap, that's where I see myself. So the legacy that I want to and I want to leave, is increasing this space between these three circles until they become one big circle, where every business is innovative, every business is agile to the changes that are happening in the industry or in technologies, and they have the technical excellence or the technology excellence to leverage and have the competitive advantage. That's where I live.
All right, Mr. Das. So, with your wealth of experience and the impact you have already made, it's clear that your influence in shaping the future of IT and governance is only going to grow,
Absolutely.
right? So, Mr. Das, corporate governance today isn't just about compliance, talking about corporate governance. So, it's about guiding innovation responsibly. So, having said that, with technology evolving rapidly, how do you see governance shaping IT strategy and decision making? And in an era of AI, cybersecurity risk, and digital transformation, what governance principles do you believe are essential? Also, part B of the question is, how can organizations ensure they stay both innovative and accountable?
Lovely question. To answer this question, I'll take the examples of two people. Uh, there's Thomas Alva Edison and there is Nikola Tesla. Right. So Thomas Alva Edison, as we know, invented the incandescent bulb or the light bulb. And Nikola Tesla came up with direct current, which we use so much in our homes these days. They were both amazing inventors, right? But people say that Thomas Alva Edison was evil because technically he did not invent the light bulb. He had a team of scientists, 75 or so scientists working for him, who used to do all these inventions. And he used to own the patents to those inventions. And that is why we say Thomas Alva Edison invented the light bulb. And we say that Nikola Tesla was a genius and he was the actual scientist who used to actually invent things by himself, had a power source that he was planning to give away free power to the whole world. He had almost completed an invention on that power source. But I have a different view to this, right? Thomas Alva Edison cannot be taken lightly because he was an innovator. And now, what's the difference between an invention and an innovation, right? An invention is something new that you've created, right? For the first time. An innovation is taking that something new, making it practical for everybody's usage, and then monetizing it, making it a business prospect, right? That is an innovation. And that is, I feel, the genius of Thomas Alva Edison. And that is what we need to understand. An invention is a bolt from the blue. Somebody gets an idea, and they create something new. And innovation is creating a process where things change, new things come in, they become practical, and they get monetized. They achieve the objectives of the organization. I mean, when I say monetized, I don't mean just monetized, because there are non-governmental organizations and non-profit organizations which do not think about monetization as much as others do. The idea is to do innovation so that the goals can be achieved. This kind of thinking is required in boards these days, board of directors of organizations. I think technologists need to play a more and more strategic role uh, in the organizations. They can contribute to the organizations much better. They can think about things that cannot be thought about from other perspectives, right? Because when somebody spent a tremendous amount of time in technology, 20 to 25 years, they have a unique perspective about things. When they go into boards, um, it helps the organization in looking at things very differently. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely, absolutely, Mr. Das. And I was thinking about that, it's such a thoughtful perspective that you have put forward. Governance isn't just about setting rules, it's about ensuring that technology is used responsibly while still driving innovation.
Absolutely. Just following the rules or
Great.
just making people follow the rules is not governance. Governance is also
Right.
understanding and looking at opportunities and changing the standards as we move along.
And keep innovating, right? Great, great, great. All right. So that brings us to the last question of the podcast. And, joining Directors Institute is a significant step for professionals looking to strengthen their leadership in governance and strategy, Mr. Das. So, what motivated you to become a part of this platform? And how do you see it enhancing your perspective on IT governance, boardroom decision making, and corporate leadership?
I have spent 25 years in the industry. I've worked for software product companies like Microsoft, software services companies like Capgemini. I've worked for core businesses like financial services, Invesco. I'm now working for a healthcare and pharmaceutical company. And this gives me a very unique perspective about the industry. When I think about my career and my future, I think I can provide or I can contribute to the industry a lot more if I move out of IT. If I expand my scope beyond IT. Being a part of the board will give me that unique opportunity, and Directors Institute gives me that unique opportunity. One is the content of the training, which is very interesting, right? It's absolutely beautiful. It gives me deep insights into, for example, company law, for example, how organizations are run, how decisions are taken, how governance is done at the board of directors level. But that's just the content, but there's more to it. Uh, there's a larger perspective that it opens up your mind beyond IT. It opens up your mind beyond what I have been doing for such a long time. It's like, I think IT is just a tool, right? Technology is just a tool, like elevators, for example, right? Elevators are used in buildings all over the place. But before elevators were invented, we take it so lightly. Before elevators were invented, buildings used to be 2 or 3 floors tall because people would have to walk up stairs. And how much can they walk up, right? But after elevators were invented, we now construct skyscrapers, which are hundreds of stories tall, right? But I mean, it changed construction all over, completely, elevators. But it's not about elevators. It's about buildings, right? Similarly, technologies, it's not about technologies. It's about running the business. It's about contributing to the organizational goals and objectives. And I've spent a tremendous amount of time now in elevators. It's high time I think about buildings. It's high time I think about uh, the overall business and how all the dots get connected and what's the bigger picture. And Directors Institute opens up your mind that way. It shows you a very different view about the world. And that's why I joined this platform. And it's been good so far.
Absolutely incredible, Mr. Das. And it's always inspiring to hear how experienced leaders like yourself continue to invest in growth and expand their influence beyond technical expertise.
Thank you very much.
Tell you, Mr. Das, this conversation has been truly, truly insightful. From your journey through enterprise architecture and IT strategy to your perspectives on governance, innovation, and leadership, it's clear that the future of technology isn't just about systems. Thank you for sharing your expertise and taking us through the mindset behind large scale IT modernization and governance. And it's been a pleasure having you on FaceTime with Leaders.
It's been an absolute pleasure for me too. I look forward to coming back sometime. Thank you very much.
Thank you once again, Mr. Das. And to all our viewers, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow us for more conversations with industry leaders shaping the future of business, technology, and governance. Until next time, keep learning, keep leading, and stay ahead of the curve. Thank you so much, and have a nice day.